My name's Sean Wade. I'm the sales director here with the Share Group. We are excited to bring on David Bartels, coach and founder of Easy.Seller Leads. We talk a lot about data and leads, and really wanted to bring in an expert on the listing presentation and really the psychology behind sellers. So David's a very experienced agent, sold over 1,000 homes, over 100 in a year. So excited to have him on board and talk to us about some conversion and finding more listings here in 2026.
Thank you, Sean. Nice to meet everybody. Welcome to be here. I see some familiar faces in here, so hello, everybody. Today we've got a short period of time to cover a lot of ground, and I know most of us are thinking about putting 2025 in the rearview mirror and really starting to focus on 2026. And we're putting our plans and our strategies into place. So I want to share some things that I think that everybody can do in 2026. In fact, you shouldn't wait. Things that we can do right now to start getting more transactions. So I prepared a little deck. It's designed to share some strategy with you. We'll get to the end and we'll ask questions at that point. So we're going to save time at the end. So if you've got a question, jot it down. Don't forget about it. We'll stay on, answer those questions as we need to. So I appreciate the Share Group having me on here. So let's get started. So let's talk about how to actually win more listings in 2026. So if I can get this deck to work, we'll go from there. So first of all, getting more listings is not as easy as it looks. All right. Most people are thinking about listing that really has gotten down to hustle. I mean, there's a massive amount of competition for listings. Some of you might be surprised to know that 1 out of every 87 adults in the United States has a real estate license. I mean, even in your sphere, most of us are relying and leaning into our sphere of influence to generate more business. But even with your sphere now, it seems like even everybody you already likes you and knows you and trusts you, they know 5 or 6 other agents already. And so we've even got to figure out a way to compete at a higher level. And so, a lot of us are hustling, we're cold calling, we're door knocking, we're doing mailers, we're running ads, we're begging our sphere, we're buying leads that were sold to 5 other agents, or we've resorted to paying massive referral fees just to get something going. And that's really the hard way to do it. But it is a numbers game, and if you got nothing else going on, that's exactly what you need to do, because the problem we're all trying to solve out there is that we just need to have more conversations with people who want to talk about selling. I mean, when I talk to you, you guys all tell me, well, if I just had 10 listing presentations, I'd close 7 of them. 7 of those would list with me. And the problem is you're just not going on enough listing presentations. You're just not getting enough meetings. And so the other problem that you have, because selling is a 2-pronged challenge, you got to find people to sell, and B, you got to sell the people you find. So we got to convert a higher percentage of those people into listings and other opportunities. And so those are the 2 things that I like to focus on: finding people to sell and selling the people you find. And some of us are just wishing it were easier. But that's not what we can wish. It's a super competitive environment. We can't wish it were easy. We got to focus on getting better. And that's really the thing. And one of the lessons that I teach all the time, and it's hard for some agents to hear the message, but I'm going to share it here anyway. And that is, failure to convert the lead is not the fault of the lead. Now, I say that with a lot of love. I mean, what we're doing here is not fishing and the fish jump in the boat. We got to catch the fish. The market presents all kinds of opportunities for us, and we've got a lot of what we do will determine what the success is that we're going to have. And so, first of all, when you get a prospect, let's define what a qualified prospect is. A prospect is not a name. It's not somebody who's likely to list, or an expired, or a FSBO, or a canceled lead, or somebody who is a probate, or whatever lead type it is that you're working. Whether it's that's not a prospect. That's just really a name. Our job is simply to identify those names, and as whether or not there's somebody that's qualified as a prospect. Now, keep in mind, statistically, only 2.9% of all homeowners are likely to list in the next 12 months. The turnover rate is very low, as low as it's probably ever been. And so so it's really tough to just take a shotgun approach and try to just market to everybody. We really got to zero marketing in, and we want to zero our marketing in on people who are likely to sell, so a qualified prospect. One of the challenges I see with agents is that they assume that if they're having a conversation with somebody that's not ready to list right now, it's a waste of your time. And let me tell you something. Having a conversation with somebody who's thinking about listing 3 months from now or 6 months from now or 12 months from now is not a waste of your time. These are conversations you should have. One of the things that I'll talk to you about is you got to be having 5 conversations a day with people who are likely to do a transaction. And that's important whether or not they're ready to do a transaction now, next month, or next year, because the way I always looked at it is even if they're not ready to go right now, and I wish they were, I'm going to need that transaction. I'm going to need that listing in 3 months too. I'm going to need that listing in 6 months too. So part of the work that I'm doing is, yes, I'm looking for ready to transact people right now, but I'm also looking to fill my pipeline. So I always have people to talk to. I always have listings, and I always have transactions in escrow. And the challenge that most agents are having is they're using a flawed, ineffective sales presentation, and where it's focused on your needs and not the seller's needs. I mean, think about that. Most of our marketing sounds a little like, I'm a good agent, you need a good agent, hire me to be your agent, right? I mean, if I'd have met my wife and said, hi, nice to meet you want to get married? She wouldn't be my wife right now. But I think it's funny because when we run into somebody who's interested, whether or not we know them or not, and who indicates an interest in maybe doing a transaction at some point in the future, we go straight to want to get married. And then we wonder why we get so much resistance. And what we've got to do is we've got to change our approach. And to change our approach, we really need to understand how the sales psychology works. All right. So let's kind of break this down a little bit and see if we can make some progress on this. So just remember, lead types are not leads. They're just names. So we have the obligation for our family, to ourselves, and for the client to turn them into prospects. And so that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about right now. So let's do that. All right. So the 3-step process: find people to sell the people you find, and close the escrow. So here's some things. I want you to think about having 5 conversations per day with people who are likely to transact. You want to add value. So in your communication, you want to add value. What problem is it they're trying to solve? All right. So what problem? So if you're working with absentee owners, for instance, what problem do you think that they're likely to have, and how are you going to solve that for them? If you're working with FSBOs, their problem is their house isn't selling. If you're working with expired, their house didn't sell. If you're working with absentee homeowners, it's probably a headache, or it's a money pit of some sort. All right. So you got to figure out what their problem is, and then you've got to use a strategy that's going to solve that problem. So the way I like to go about it, because I don't like chasing deals, and I suspect you guys don't either. If you're chasing deals, if you're cold calling, if you're door knocking, if you're really, being aggressive and trying to identify opportunities, you probably prefer not to. So what you want to do is you want to soften the approach and figure out how to get sellers asking you for more information. Now, all marketing, whether or not you're making an outbound phone call, sending an email, door knocking, doing a mailer, running an advertisement, all marketing comes down to the right message to the right person at the right time. And you've got to start with people who are likely to do a transaction. So before you craft your message, before you make your first phone call, before you send an email or a letter or a postcard or whatever it is you're doing, you've got to understand the 3 psychological stages that home sellers go through. And so we're focused on listings here, so not buyers. So we're going to focus on getting listings right here. Every seller starts in research mode weeks or months before they decide that they're going to sell their house. They start having these thoughts, thinking about selling. If I were to sell, when am I going to sell? What am I going to buy? When are we going to do it? What's going on with the market? All of a sudden, they start asking around and trying to get a feel. They're paying attention to what's going on at open houses in their neighborhood and new listings and that kind of thing. Then they evolve and they make it into strategy mode. And now it's starting to get a little more real. Now they're starting to put a plan together and starting to think about the ways that they're going to update that. What repairs am I going to do? What is my home worth? What's the best time to sell? And now this is where they might start talking to agents. And this is really important. And you know that you're having this kind of conversation with a seller when they start saying, well, what are you going to do to sell my house differently? What do you think my house is worth? How long do you think it's going to take? What do you think I ought to do with this room? You think I should leave it or should I paint it? Whatever it is that they're starting to get real serious about it. Now, most agents want to show up when it's decision mode, and that's the third step. But the problem is when you show up in decision mode when they're really ready to go, you probably missed the deal already. That's why you got to get in there early. You got to get to them when they're in research mode. You got to get to them when they're in strategy mode. And here's the other thing, when the approach that I want you to think about how you do it, because this is the problem I solved. Now, I got stuck in this 53 to 77 transaction a year rut for many years. And then one year I finally figured it out. Now, that was all hustle, guys. I spent $50,000 on TV ads. I got 0 listings. I did a radio show for a year, 0 lists. I could get buyer leads, but I didn't want buyer leads. All right, here's my thinking around buyers. If I don't like you enough to buy you dinner, I'm not showing you houses either. That's how strongly I feel about working seller leads versus buyer leads. And so so the big mistake that I made all those years where I couldn't figure it out, I went from 76 transactions to 173 transactions in 1 year. In those last 2 years, I was in full-time production. I did over 300 transactions and 300 million in transaction volume. The big difference that I made was really understanding this piece. You know, if you've ever done a job interview, you show up with your resume and you explain all your work history and all the great things that you do and why you're capable of being able to do that new position. Now, we don't have real jobs, so we don't have to interview that hard. This is as hard a work as you can get, but it's not technically a real job. All right, just ask your friends. They don't think you have a real job. And so the bottom line is that when I understood this, that people weren't really interviewing me. What they were trying to do was figure out what the right strategy was. See, they were taking all this information that they were getting from multiple sources and they were synthesizing it and coming up with their version on the best way to sell their house. And so what happened was, this is the revelation I had. This is my epiphany. I realized at some point that sellers weren't choosing an agent at all. They're choosing a strategy, then they're hiring an agent to implement that strategy. It's the agent with the best strategy that's winning. And you know, in this market, it's not really that hard to compete with other agents because most agents are some variation of, I'm a good agent, you need a good agent, hire me as your agent. I'm going to take some photos, post it online, and pray for buyers.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're doing is that we're showing up with a deliberate strategy to sell a house fast. So the bottom line is that the agent with the best strategy wins. So there's 2 paths for winning listings. One is speed and one is strategy. All right. So the speed is, according to, I don't know where, I think it was a NAR statistic, a survey of buyers and sellers. A survey said that 60% of sellers choose the first agent they meet with, the first agent. Which means if you can get to them first, in other words, when they're in strategy mode or they're in research mode, the earlier you get to them, the greater the likelihood is you're going to win the listing. And if you can't be the first one in, you need to be the next one in with the right strategy, a deliberate strategy to get their household fast and for their price or more. So what we want to do then, if we know that you need to be the first agent in or the next agent in to win the listing, then we want to reach sellers when they're in research or strategy mode. And so all communication that we have with homeowners should be related to research. Not hire me because I'm a good agent, not hire me because I'm the top agent in my market, not hire me because I've been doing this for 36 years. Those aren't reasons to hire you. What you want to do is you want to offer them research. And the strategy that I've used and I've taught to over 500 agents in our program is how to sell your house fast and for your price or more. And you don't need to, I'm just giving you an example of a strategy. Okay. So this is a strategy that we came up with because it appeals to every seller. And first of all, I'm offering research because it's a how-to, it's a strategy, it's research, it's something they want to consider. So I get more listing presentations because more people want to talk to me and I convert a much higher percentage of those people. I'm not going to get into the strategy in too much detail other than to give you a quick overview. So the way that we do it is that we take the listing live on a Monday. We create scarcity, urgency, and fear of loss by severely restricting the showings until Friday. Then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, even Monday, we show it like crazy. Now, listen, if your goal is like my goal was, is to turn one listing into 2 or 3 transactions, then you do open houses, and you can do 4 open houses. You don't have to do any, but if you want, and if you get the price right, and that's key, if you get the price right in this market, you will get multiple offers. You do counters Tuesday, Wednesday, you pick an offer, you open escrow. Now, listen, I'm not offering a 10-day listing guarantee, a 10-day listing agreement. It's just a strategy, but it works 100% of the time when you get the price right. And the reason I can say that with conviction is that in every single market, in your market, wherever you're at, there are 2 kinds of inventory. There's the properly priced stuff that sells fast, often with multiple offers. Then you got the overpriced stuff that sits on the market until it becomes properly priced. And so the key here is going through the education process with the seller. And the way I do it is that we say, listen, here's examples of properly priced houses, and look how fast and how much more they sold for. So this is an example of research that we do for our clients. All right. So we understand that research and strategy attracts clients. So we create these custom lead magnets. Now, look, you can go to Chat GPT and create your own, figure out your own angle and do it that way. I'm just giving you an example. So you know what I use? I use the 10-day strategy, and I create ebooks. These are custom ebooks that we do. We interview them. We customize them. Your picture, your bio, that kind of. I'm not here to. I'm making no offer of purchase here, guys. So don't worry about it. So I'm not selling you the product. I'm just giving you an idea about how our 10-day strategy works and how we leverage it. So we use it as a lead magnet. And what I mean by that, instead of meeting somebody at Starbucks who's indicated that, overhearing a conversation, you butt in, you're having a conversation with them, or however or a sphere of influence, or somebody at a cocktail party, anybody, and instead of going straight from, I'm a good agent, you need a good agent, can I be your agent? Now I can say, oh, if you're thinking about selling, I'd love to send you my 10-day playbook to get your household fast and for your price or more. I just need your email address. That's a much easier way to start a relationship. Wouldn't you agree? Because if I go too hard and too fast, I'm going to get resistance. And my idea is to build a relationship. So it's I don't know if some people think it's inappropriate, but I use the analogy of dating all the time. When you go too hard and too fast, you get rejection. When you take your time and you're patient and you lower your expectations, you just focus on the end result, you get better results, right? And so when you want to take these relationships slower, and you want to have a long-term objective, because some of these people, when they're in research mode, they could be weeks or months from selling. But if I can start building that relationship, because here's how it works, guys. Let's use your sphere of influence as an example. Forget somebody you already know. Now, your sphere of influence probably knows 5 or 6 people already. Okay. If there's 1 out of every 7 adults has a license, your sphere probably knows 5 or 6 agents. They don't want to tell any of you no. Okay. And so what happens, they don't engage with anybody. They start gathering their information in a silo because they don't want to tip you off that they're doing it, because they don't want to tell you no. They don't know who they're going to choose. They're afraid to choose anybody. In fact, some people choose nobody they know just for this purpose. Okay. And so the idea is that we start, but if I can get them some information, let's say I send them, hey, if you're thinking about selling this year, I'd love to send you my 10-day playbook to get your household fast and for your price or more. Now, I might get some people say yes to that because it's research, it's strategy. It doesn't come with any strings attached. Now I send that information to them, and then I know who I need to zero in on. Now I give them a phone call and say, hey, I sent over that playbook I told you about. I wanted to make sure you received it, so. And I went and see if I can be of service. And so I can have a short conversation. I said, you know what? Why don't we do this? I know that you're weeks or months away from selling your house, but I'd love to help you as much as I can. We're friends and I want to help. So why don't I'd love to come over to your house, give you some tips on what to do and what not to do to get the house ready, start to give you an overview of what's going on in the market, maybe talk about some of the different strategies so you know your options when you're ready. Everything I just offered was research. Everything I just offered was strategy. It's easy to say yes to. Now I go invest the time. And so maybe over a couple of months, I invest 3, 4, 5 hours with them. Now, that's not a waste of your time. Because what happens is that they don't want to tell anybody no now, right? But now, because I got them so early by offering them research, now there's this law of reciprocity thing, right? Every hour I spend with them, everything that I do for them, law of reciprocity is kicking in, and it makes it very difficult for them to say no, and dramatically increases the likelihood that I'm going to win that deal. And if they got to tell 5 other people no, they're going to tell 5 people, the 5 people no that didn't even know that they were in the market, so they can tell me yes, because I invested so much time and was helpful with their research and strategy. Does that make sense, everybody? This really is important to understand. You're building a relationship. It's not a one and done sales call like we want it to be. Okay. So this is why you got to have these relationships. So here's what you do. Whatever the communication, whether or not it's in social media or text message or voice calls or door knocking, you've got to educate. Okay. Teacher base, teach everybody, educate them on how to sell their house fast, how to get their price, how to prepare their home for sale, offer them seller checklists, give them information about market conditions, home valuation. When you're constantly making these offers of value to them, whether or not it's through regular, stop sending them emails that have nothing to do with anything they want to hear about. Your brokerage is branding themselves with that. You need to create education. So here's the thing. You teach them how to sell their house themselves, and then they hire you to implement it, because they can't do it. And they're not going to hire another agent. So one of the things that I tell people to get an appointment that are a little reluctant, I said, listen, there's no cost or obligation. And the information I'm going to share with you is going to be helpful, whether or not you hire me at some point in the future, hire another agent, or sell for sale by owner. Is Thursday or Friday better? And I get the appointment. I take the pressure off. I give them the information, because I know when I can get them the information, I increase my likelihood of winning that listing to 80, 90%. Okay. Because I've got a winning strategy. All right. So educate them through multiple channels. Give them the strategy for free: social media posts, email marketing, seller check. This is an example of a social media post I did. I did this in a live coaching call that we did some time ago. And I said, if you're thinking about selling your home and want a copy of my 10-day playbook to sell it fast and for your price or more, just message me playbook and I'll make sure you get a copy. That was it. That was the whole post. I got 3 phone calls and 5 or 6 people. I ended up getting 2 or 3 listings, and I was just goofing around. All right. And because I identified them, now I didn't get all those listings the next week or the next month. It took 3 or 4 months to finally get all of them, but they all originated in this one post where I offered research and strategy to my sphere event on Facebook. So imagine if I was running an email campaign to my database, a once a month SMS campaign. Just in SMS, instead of calling everybody, I can just offer them your guide, whatever it is you're going to do. Give them a home prep guide. Give them offer a home valuation, offer a seller checklist. But all my communication, all your communication should offer value, should offer research. And then when they consume your information and they like your strategy, then you let them hire you to implement that strategy. All right, so let's wind this down a little bit. Like, the boys over here got me on the clock, so let me let me get to the bottom of it. So I want you to change your focus from getting more listings. This is a big shift. Stop thinking about getting more listings and just focus on getting more listing presentations. Does that make sense? You don't need listings, you need listing presentations. In this case, activity equals productivity. And think about this. The average listing commission, I know it varies by market, is about $10,000. So if you can figure out how to get 1 extra listing presentation a week, by whatever means you do it, okay? 1 extra listing presentation a week, that's 4 a month. If you convert just 1 in 4, 25%, you're getting 1 listing a month, and you're unlocking 10 grand a month on average. If you can close 2 and 4, 20 grand a month. You just focus on 1 extra listing presentation per week. And here's the value. Listings give you leverage. That year I told you I did 173 transactions. I was ranked 124th in the country on Real Trends ranking of top agents in America. I only listed 65 houses that year, but I did 173 because listings give you leverage. And so when I got a listing, I didn't think, oh, I'm going to make whatever I'm going to make. Okay, my ticket price was a little higher than 400, 20 grand. I always said, okay, that listing isn't 20 grand. That listing is 40 or 60 grand. And here's how you leverage listings. Sellers are buyers often, right? Then you got open houses. We don't do open houses to sell the house. Only 4% of opens result in the sale of the house. We do it to get more buyer and seller leads. And then you got repeat and referral business. So over the course of months after I get that listing, if I connect the dots back to that original listing, it should translate into 2 or 3 transactions. And so one listing presentation a month is not just one extra transaction a month. It could be 2 or 3 transactions a month. And instead of 120 grand a year, it's 240, 360 grand just by one extra listing presentation a week. All right. That's how you do it. All right. So remember, if you want buyer leads, nothing attracts buyers better than listings. Use your listing to attract. You don't need to buy buyer leads. You don't need to chase buyer. If you've got listings, you're going to have buyer leads. And so if you follow this advice, if you implement these strategies, and many of which you can do on your own, you can double or triple your business in 2026. So let me give you some action steps. All right. So first of all, the conversation you need to have with yourself is, what's your unique selling proposition? What do you do different? Are you just, let's take some photos, post it online, and pray for buyers? Or are you going to deliver a deliberate strategy to get their house sold fast and for their price more? A deliberate strategy to solve whatever problem they're having or whatever problem they're afraid that they're going to have. Okay, what is it they're trying to do, or what is it they're trying to avoid? Pain or pleasure, whatever it is, you need to figure that out, and you need to have a solution for that. You need to focus on having 5 conversations a day with potential sellers. However you do it, whether or not you're picking up the phone and calling absentee homeowners or likely to list people, whatever method you're doing, no matter how hard you're willing to work, you need to keep doing the work until you can have at least 5 conversations per day. Play a game with yourself. Don't quit until you have 5 conversations with people who want to do it. If you can do that in an hour, great. If you need 6 hours, that's what you need. You got to play the numbers. Then you got to reposition your opening statement to add value from offering research. So stop saying, I'm an agent. Can we talk about me being your agent? No, offer them something. Hey, if you're thinking about selling, why don't I send you my playbook to show you how to fill in your unique selling proposition. Start with making an offer of value that qualifies as research. That's easy for them to say, sure, I'll take a look at it. That's how you start the relationship. And then when you do that, move them to the next logical step. All right. So when I meet, so I'll tell the story about my wife. I'll use this dating scenario. Okay. And so when I met my wife for the first time, I decided that I really wanted to see her. So we met in a casual environment. I got her phone number from some nefarious way that I won't admit here, and I called her up. All right, and I got her on the phone, and I found some mutual friends we had, and I arranged this group dinner. That was a safe environment, and got her to go out. At the end of that dinner, I walked her to the car, said, "That was fun. Can we do it again?" She said, "I'm good," and said no. All right, and so I said, "All right, game on." And so I continued to follow. So what's the next logical step? So the next logical step in this process is really, let's just go out again. Just get her. So I just convinced her to go out again. We'll just have a hang. Worst thing that happen is we'll become friends, that kind of. And then every time I went out, I just wanted to make sure that she had such a good time that she'd want to do it again. Now, she later confessed to me, she said, well, every time we went out, it was the last time. All right. And all I kept doing was earning the next opportunity and the next opportunity. Now, I didn't try to hold her hand. I didn't try to kiss her goodnight. I didn't try to go too fast because I was afraid that I would break it. All right. And so I just kept focusing on what the next logical step. I wasn't in my will. I was just reading the room, figuring out where she was and trying to get her to the next logical step. Most of us are doing it backwards. We're figuring out where we want to go, and we're in a big hurry to get there. And we're forcing ourselves into a situation, and before we've earned the right. So if I had went in for that good night kiss before it was ready, I'd have got resistance and could have broken the relationship. And what some of you are doing is you're asking for the business before you've earned the right, before you've earned the trust, before you've built the value, and you're missing opportunities you could otherwise have gotten had you nurtured that relationship, had you focused on where they were in the process, and just focused on helping them get there no matter what their timeline was. And if you do that, you'll build more relationships, you'll have more trust, you'll get more business, you'll get more referrals. And so here's the moral of the story. Don't propose marriage until you've earned it. All right. So listen, if you like this, come back next week. I've enjoyed doing this with you. We're going to do a follow-up session on this. This is just really around mindset. Okay. Next week, top lead sources, finding ready to list sellers, what the phone scripts, texting scripts, overcoming objections, and converting leads into listings. So if you want more of that, come on back, session 2, about the same time, I think next week. And I'd love to hear from you. If you want more about what I'm doing, Easy.Seller That's where you can find me and go from there. So I'm 3 minutes over, Sean. Please forgive me. Any
No,
questions?
you're good. We appreciate it. Yeah, we do hope everybody joins us next week. Same day, next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Really appreciate your time today, David, and bringing in just a lot of valuable information. I think when we connected, it was actually through a mutual, one of our customers who does some coaching with you. We really connected on just how you're building your listing pipeline through it's a numbers game, right? You touch on it. You need to get more listings. You need to have more conversations and more presentations, and just providing the value and building the relationship, and bringing something that is going to make a difference to them. Something that other agents aren't doing, and then finding them in the research in the strategy mode. It's before they're googling realtor near me or filling something out on Zillow that goes to Lord knows how many agents there. So we really appreciate your time, and looking forward to next week as well. With that being said, did we have any questions or any topics here?
No, I don't mind jumping in, Dave. What you have to say really resonates with me. I find like providing the service first, they become really engaged with you and start to trust you. And then the idea of starting over with another agent sounds miserable. Right. And you give them no reason to not hire you. And it should be a de facto outcome that the next logical thing is for me to execute your vision, which you got from me, that I'm going to perform for you, that you completely support, and we're going to meet each other's expectations. So I think as a person who's done about 7 transactions in the past 9 years, nobody has presented me a compelling and clear offer like we're going to sell it in 10 days at or more than you expect to get, right? I actually went through a transaction where I had 23 offers, and a week later we had 0.
Right.
And 7 of them were over ask. And we rejected all of them instead of countering and got down to 2 or 3. They died. And my realtor had to pay to restage my home because we moved out. Right. So it can go bad if you don't know what Dave says to do. I can tell you that.
100%. There are horror stories out there. So, by the way,
that's hard to
I'm
do.
licensed in California too. All right, just so next time.
Gotcha. Gotcha, Dave.
So, any question? Let me just say this. So, listen, I'm 40 years ago. I taught I was a Dale Carnegie sales training instructor, and what Tim reminds me of this, and in fact, I shared this on our coaching call yesterday, is that, and I still remember this so vividly. And thank goodness I had the benefit of going through that training as a very young, inexperienced salesperson. And that is the way the Dale Carnegie method is simple. Take the time to find out what your prospect wants and spend the rest of the time helping them get it. If you take the time to find out what your prospect wants and you spend the rest of the time helping them get it, you don't need any high pressured or slick closing techniques to get them to choose you, because choosing you will be the natural conclusion towards which all your efforts have been directed. Let me tell you, this real estate, you are not going to close somebody. You're not selling a car. You're not selling a pair of shoes. You're not going to talk them into doing something. It's a long-term relationship. There's got to be mutual respect. And when you feel like you're going to talk them into doing business with you, you're in the wrong game. All you're going to do is create more resistance. You've got to give them a compelling message and appeal to both them emotionally and logically. Because at the end of the day, people buy based on emotion and they justify their decision with logic. You got to show it with both. And here's what I noticed. If they like your strategy, they like you, they trust you, they resonate with you. And that settles and solves the emotional part of the decision-making process that they're going through. All right. So I'll give you another example for those of you that might be inexperienced here. So there may be some new agents here. So my niece is 35 years old. She lives with her mother in South Carolina. And she finally, after some prodding from me, she decided to get her real estate license. And so we put her in this program. She's like, Uncle David, why would anybody list their house with me? I don't know how to sell a house. The entire, outside of passing the exam on her third attempt, okay, outside of passing the exam, okay, to get licensed, the only real estate experience she had was signing a rental agreement when she was in college. All right. And so that was the extent of agreement. She said, so why would anybody hire me to list their house? I don't know how to do it. So we put her in the program. I said, listen, if you present the right strategy, no one's going to ask you how many houses you sold. They either, if they love the strategy, they want the strategy, they're going to hire you to implement it. Well, within 90 days, she had 2 listings. All right. And nobody asked her how many houses because she got them both in escrow. And then one of them turned into a second transaction. And now she's off and running on her way to becoming a full-time agent. Now. So it doesn't matter what your level of experience is. So a lot of these are self-limiting beliefs that keep us from doing more transactions. And so when you just focus on the basics, focus on 5 conversations a day, focus on solving problems, focus on helping people get to the next logical step, everything else will take care of itself. Activity will equal the productivity and income that you're looking for. All right. Is
Awesome.
that our parting
Well, thanks
shot?
again, David. Yep,
Great.
I think we're good. Really appreciate your time, and yeah, hope to see everybody same day, same time next week. Hear a little more on some of the scripting and additional ways we can get more listings here next year.